Initially, I was an arts development officer, so I knew about Birds of Paradise, but initially I started working as an education officer, and that was in the first instance on Working Legs, which Alistair Gray had been working on with the company. But Working Legs was, the workshops were pretty intense. I was very sure about looking at access, but also trying to find out what we, the groups we were going to, the sort of needs that they had to make sure that the workshops were going to work really well. And one chap who was one of the workshop leaders was Ian Hamilton, who's visually impaired. He worked freelance on a number of things with us over a period of time. He now works freelance with BBC, and one of our, I suppose, disaster days was when he came back with Alison, who was his assistant at the time, to say, I said, right, okay, how did it go? And his face, he was pretty livid. They got there and they actually hadn't told us that the group they were working with were deaf. So we had this moment of Ian standing saying, what's going on? So that's just a little ditty of my initial experiences. Thereafter, I continued to work with them doing workshops, etc. And at one point, Andrew Dawson, who was then the artistic director, asked me if I would, come on board and start to work more with Out the Darkness, with Birds of Paradise Theatre Company, and direct Working Legs. It went very well, but for me, I suppose it's that thing again, is the expectation of people who don't have access to training, don't have access to the things that everybody else can do. They are suddenly expected to become professionals like overnight. And I think that for me was always the hardest thing. You had people you knew had great potential, but at the same time, they didn't have the years where they were allowed to train and learn various things. And I think that was quite an important thing in my learning curve when I was with Birds of Paradise. For me, it's about showing people who people are, what they can do, rather than saying, right, we're going to do something about mental health, or we're going to do something about such and such. It's about, we're going to get you on stage and you're going to be performers. I think the one thing now is what you have performers who have had time to actually perform, train and all the rest of it. In the time that I was there, that wasn't happening at all. And you would maybe get someone who was very, very talented, as you get in any person. Someone can walk in and be, a really good actor, director, whatever, that, they've just got that kind of talent. But others who, you can see it and you need training. And I think in the time I was there, that wasn't quite there. I mean, I was working with different people when we were doing different types of workshops, radio workshops, writing workshops and things like that. But I think now you would be wanting people to take more roles in what Birds of Paradise is doing, from directing, also that whole thing about saying that this isn't acceptable, this isn't the way I want to work, or I think it's just it's a totally different era, and I think it's almost like I'm trying to use the right word. I think it's just part and parcel of theatre. It's not so much anymore, I think, almost sometimes I think it's a shock, in the 90s sometimes it had to be some sort of shock factor, which I couldn't get. I'm sure the people that were doing it could get it because they were saying, just have a good look at us. Whereas I was going, but why do we have to have the shock factor? We don't need to do that all the time. I mean, theatre does that. It's there to do that. But I think nowadays it's audience can go. You want audiences just to go and see a piece of theatre, not to say, oh, we're going to see a piece of theatre with disabled people in it. Do you know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. You don't want that anymore. You just want people to go along, see a good show, or see something that they see as incredibly thought-provoking and really, really think that was great, and not start talking about, but that person had, or that person. Do you know? And that's for me, I think, when someone walks in, and someone said to me once, we were doing a piece and we'd been working with a company from Kerala in southern India, Strathclyde, and they said, you know, we said when you went on stage you could see people with disabilities, learning disabilities. He said, but the minute they started performing, I saw nothing. It was just actors. And I said, well, that's the way it's supposed to be. And that's what you want. You want it just to be, you don't want it to be anything else but that, you know. You have to always think of a different way of how you work with people. You must think of a different way of how you work with people to allow them to achieve. And therefore, it's about that whole idea of changing perception of how people are, because they look different, they act differently, they use a wheelchair or whatever. And it's, for me, that's the kind of passion I've got, is how do we find ways of allowing people to be seen as people, and very talented people in their own right, but not necessarily in the way that we all, you know, that our society views them. And I think for me that's a really important thing. But I think with Birds of Paradise, they have slowly progressed in a way that they're taking ownership of how they want people to view their work and what they want to do with their work, rather than other people telling them. And I think that's a key thing for me, is you want people to start saying, do you know what, that's fine, but I actually want to do it this way. And I think the more we've got that happening in society and through theatre, I think theatre's a fabulous medium to show people that we don't all have to have this similarity in how we do things, you know. And I think Birds of Paradise are beginning to do that in a much bigger way.